Welcome to Driving to College. Today we'll be cruising around campus in a 2017 Subaru Forester, as well as an e-bike available on the Drop Mobility app from Pike Ride. Today we're at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I should note that I do not work for Colorado College, nor am I a representative of Colorado College. It's just a beautiful campus and a great school that I'd like to show you around while we talk about financial aid award letters. So let's talk about financial aid award letters. I did an internet browser search recently for financial aid award letter and came up with 56.3 million results. And that is a lot of results. So I narrowed it down by images and then again by sample. So images of sample letters. And I still scrolled longer than I wanted to and got tired of it before I clicked out of it, which led me to realize that for those of you shopping around at different schools, it can be very confusing when you see the financial aid award letter because they are all different. And they're all different for a couple of reasons. One is that schools have different software that they use for doing packaging of financial aid letters and connected to the information that you submit to the FAFSA. And the other reason is that there is currently no law at the federal level to unify financial aid award letters, although there has been some talk about that, so that could be a change that comes up in the next couple of years. But until then, we have a confusing situation with tons of different options. So let me walk you through the basics of a financial aid award letter and give you some tips on what to look at, what to look for, what to ask, what you should see, and what things mean. So when you're looking at a financial aid award letter, you want to look for two main things in that letter or on that piece of paper. One area is your cost or your charges, and the next area is your financial aid. Essentially, what you will be looking for is to add up all your aid and subtract that from your total cost to get an out-of-pocket amount that you will owe for that year of school. So let's dive into cost or charges, aid, and out-of-pocket. On the cost side of things, what you ultimately want is a bottom line for that column so that you will know what your charges are for the year. That will be your cost of attendance, COA, which I explain in greater detail in the financial aid overview and FAFSA video. But the one thing you're going to want to look for on the cost is, are they counting it up for the full academic year? That's what you want. Or are they only doing it per term, which is really not what you want unless your student is starting midway through the academic year. If they're starting in January or February, then that's fine to do the one term. Other than that, what you really want is a full year statement. So what types of things should you be looking for to be included in the cost of attendance or the charges? These are the things that I think are really important to make sure are in your charges so that you don't have any hidden fees beyond what you see on the award letter. You should see tuition, fees, except perhaps for course fees that happen when you sign up for art courses or lab courses that require a small fee, but any other school-based fees you should see. Room and board should be on there unless you have already told the school that you are not going to be living on campus. You should see an allowance for books, and you should see something about insurance. Most schools will require students to have health insurance, and they may put that on there as for what they would charge through a health insurance plan. You want it to be on there just so that you know about it, and then you can take it off if your student is still going to stay on your health insurance or if you have another way of getting that requirement met. If any of these are missing, you'll want to ask the school about those and why they aren't on there. And then I would just, when you get a chance to talk to anybody, I would just throw out the question, are there any other charges that we will see throughout the school year that aren't on this letter? And then what are they and how much are they? And if you really want to push a little bit and then say, well, why aren't they on this letter? A school should be putting every charge that they can on that letter so that you see the true cost amount. The next area that you'll be looking for is your total aid or your financial aid summary. And here it's key to recognize what types of aid they are putting down. Types of aid could be the two good ones are the free money ones, which are grants and scholarships. So a grant would be like a Pell Grant or an SEOG grant or a state grant. Sometimes schools will give grants as well. And then scholarships. Scholarships are usually from the school. It could be that you have a scholarship from a community organization. If that scholarship that your son or daughter won is going to the school that you enroll in and then to be applied to your account, you'll want to make sure the school knows that. If it's been awarded and is a check coming to you, to your son or daughter, you don't need to let the school know about that. You can just use the money for school. An important thing to ask about scholarships is whether or not those scholarships are for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. And if those scholarships are renewable, make sure you know what the requirements are to keep those scholarships for the second, third, and fourth year. So the next type of aid that might show up on your award letter is work study. Work study can be a tricky one, and you should know that if it is listed, that it is essentially a job. So it might be listed as aid to be taken out of your charges for the year to lower your out-of-pocket, but you will be trading, your son or daughter will be trading hours of work for that money. So you'll want to ask how many hours per week they are using in their formula to put the amount of federal work study that they have on the award letter. So if they come back and they say they're using 30 hours per week, and I have seen schools that do that, then you'll know that what they're saying is that your son or daughter will need to work 30 hours a week at kind of probably minimum wage or a campus minimum wage job to get that kind of money. And so you will be sacrificing whatever money your student could make with an off-campus or a different on-campus job that you might be counting on for other uses. So basically, if your family is planning on student employment at a Starbucks or a Target or something like that to help cover the cost of school, then you need to know that if work study is listed on there as financial aid, either you will need to take that off and say that you won't be doing work study, or you will need to not count on the Starbucks and Target money unless you want your son or daughter to be working 60 or 70 hours per week while they're in school. The next type of aid that you will see on there is loans. And this will be important too, because you'll want to look for all the loans that they might list as aid, and you want to know that even if they have a loan listed on the financial aid award letter, that does not obligate you to take the loan. Signing a financial aid award letter or somehow indicating acceptance of a financial aid award letter through a student portal or some other type of mechanism also does not obligate you to take out that loan. If you know you don't want loans, or you know you only want one loan, like the Stafford student loan, and you see that they have put other types of loans on there, you might just let them know, hey, we're not interested in that loan. Can you take it off and run it again? So there you've got your cost column and your total cost. You've got your aid column and your total aid. You've kind of looked through the aid side to know what types of aid they're including. And then you're going to subtract the aid from the cost to get out of pocket. So what exactly is out of pocket? In some ways it's pretty simple, because that means what you're going to have to pay for that year of school beyond the different types of financial aid. But you'll want to remember that out of pocket doesn't mean total cost of school, because your out of pocket is what you might have to pay through cash payments or savings that you've had in some sort of 529 plan or summer jobs. But your total cost of school would want to include the loans. So you might be borrowing money year to year that needs to be paid back, but your out of pocket won't include loans because technically you don't have to scramble for that money. So out of pocket is what you will owe for school after all types of financial aid have been applied. So I think it's an important thing for families to know and have talked through, maybe even before you get to the financial aid award letter stage, is if and how much you're going to be willing to borrow for school, and if and how much you are willing or able to pay out of pocket after you borrow. So a lot of families will say, well, we don't want to borrow for student loans. And that is a noble effort, and it's great if you can do it. It it is a doable. It will change perhaps some of your options for schools that you attend. It may change the way you look at the first year or two. But know that, and know that if you're thinking you don't want to borrow at all, then you'll want to know that going into it, so that you can plan appropriately. But if you decide, we think it's okay to borrow some money because the student's going to get a degree and it'll be something they can pay off, but you decide we're going to limit our borrowing to the Stafford loan for students at about $5,500 a year for the first year, then you'll know you don't want to see a whole bunch of loans thrown into your financial aid package so that your out of pocket looks low, and then all of a sudden later on realize, well, wait a second, they had, two or three types of loans we don't want to take in there. And so when you take that out, your out of pocket grows significantly. So then, yeah, you'll want to think as well as what do you think you can cover as a family out of pocket for payments? A lot of schools will do payments over 10 months or at least over a semester of, for those costs. So you'll want to think about your max out of pocket. So let's say you're willing to borrow a Stafford loan and you say that we're willing to do an out of pocket max of $5,000. Then you'll know that when you get that financial aid award letter, that what you're looking for basically is a financial aid package that only includes a Stafford student loan and that leaves you with an out-of-pocket cost of $5,000 or less. So let's talk about a few tips for the financial aid award letter itself. My first tip is going to sound pretty basic, but it is that you read the letter. I would encourage you, when you get a financial aid award letter from any school, no matter how confusing or frustrating it looks, go ahead and read it. There's always going to be some fine print in there, and so you'll want to read that. A lot of that should start to make sense the more you read different schools, but go ahead and read the letter. And then my next tip is to study the letter. And what I mean by study the letter is to jot down notes, jot down some questions. Anything that doesn't make sense to you, you'll want to write that down. And you'll want to study the letter to go through what we just talked about, the cost and the aid. And you'll want to see what costs are in there, if there are any missing. You'll want to see what types of aid they have listed, what might be missing, or what they might have thrown in there that you don't necessarily want. And so you'll want to study that, and then you'll want to jot down the questions, which leads to my next tip, which is to ask questions. Ask, ask, ask. I encourage you to ask as many questions as you need to ask to understand exactly what you're getting into financially of any school. If you ask questions and they seem to not want to be transparent about their award or their letters or their tuition, that's probably going to tell you a little something about the school. And typically the way I figure that is that if they're a little iffy on their information about finances, it probably means that they know that their tuition is too high for what they're offering. You should be able to get straightforward answers, and if you can't, you might want to ask yourself then, what are they trying to hide? So I'll finish this video with a little story about an extended family member of mine who some time ago was graduating high school and looking for colleges. And so I was out there visiting and I was talking to her, and I learned that, a few days later that she was going to be driving up to a state school in California that she'd been accepted at to put down her housing deposit, get enrolled in all of her classes, and do all that summer stuff. And so I said, hey, congratulations, that sounds great. We were talking a little bit more, and I said, so, how much are they charging you? What are your payments going to be like? And she got a blank look on her face. And then I looked at her parents, and they had blank looks on their faces. And I said, have you talked to anybody at the school about cost, about financial aid? And they said, no. So she was going up there to enroll and put down money on a room, and was telling everybody she was going to this school, but she had no idea how much it was going to cost her. She didn't know what financial aid they were giving her. She knew nothing. They knew nothing about the money side. This is when I started to realize that it can be an incredibly confusing thing. And this was hard for me because it deflated her a little bit. She's so excited about going to college, but they just didn't know how to even have the money conversation. So I helped her. We talked through it. We met the next morning before she left and at a McDonald's, and we talked through some things, and I showed her on the website and kind of helped her figure out what some next steps for her would be. And so when she went up there, the first thing she did was make an appointment with the financial aid office for that day as soon as she could. And she went in there and talked to them and began to work out the money cost of things. So that was a story that reminded me just how confusing and stressful the financial aid process can be for families and students as they do this. So my goal is to help make it as easy as possible, or to answer questions that I can, so that families and students can find the right school that's a right fit, where they're going to get a great education, but they're going to get a great education at a price they understand and can afford. So if you have questions that I didn't answer about financial aid award letters, go ahead and post those at the bottom. Check out my other videos for other topics. And my goal is to help you guys enjoy the process of the college search and to feel good about the school that your student, your child ends up at and hopefully graduates from. So until next time, enjoy the journey.